Hi everybody, Dan Bailey here with some more Fujifilm camera tips for you. Today we're going to talk about the AFC custom settings menu that's found on most of the X series cameras. Before we get started though, just wanted to take a minute and remind you guys about my Photography on the Brain video lesson course. This is my 30 lesson series where we dive down deeply into the realm of creativity and photography at a much more cerebral level. We explore a number of really insightful topics and I give you assignments and help you guys push your own creativity and confidence with the camera as you're developing your own style as a photographer and an artist. So if you'd like to join me for this special creative journey and let me help you become the best photographer you can be, you can find the link to my Photography on the Brain course here. I also like to extend my gratitude to everybody who's taken the time to watch my videos, leave comments, share them with your own followers. If you'd like to offer me a little bit of extra support, you feel free to leave me a super thanks. You can find those right here, the little heart-shaped icon. Of course, certainly not mandatory, but very much appreciated. Okay, let's get started. Anybody who's used their X series camera to shoot motion, fast action, sports, wildlife, anything that's moving quickly, we've seen how fast these cameras can acquire and track moving subjects. And this is just a testament to how well the autofocus system works on these cameras. The Fujifilm engineers have done an amazing job coming up with this system, refining its performance, and constantly tweaking the algorithms to give these cameras the best autofocus speed and performance and accuracy possible. And one of the most powerful features that you'll find on most X series cameras, and one that's certainly helped elevate the system to the kind of performance that they're capable of, is the AFC custom settings menu. And this menu allows you to customize how the autofocus system on the X series cameras works and refine exactly how it tracks and acquires moving subjects so that you can best capture the type of motion that you're shooting. Because not every type of motion is the same. Some subjects move more quickly, more erratically. Sometimes you'll have subjects that pass behind things in the foreground that can confuse the autofocus system. Sometimes you'll have subjects that move so quickly into the frame, it happens so fast, you have so little time to react, and the camera has little time to react as well. And so with the AFC custom settings menu, you can tweak the camera and change how it actually behaves when you're tracking these moving subjects. In this video, I'm going to give you a full tutorial on how the AFC custom settings menu works and how you can use it to your advantage to best capture the types of subjects you like to shoot. This setting first appeared on the X-T2 and it's now included in nearly every single model that's made since then. I will say that at first glance, this setting can be a little bit confusing, so I'm going to walk you through it so you can better understand how it works. There are actually two parts to the system, the parameters and the presets. So we'll start with the parameters. The Fujifilm autofocus system uses 3 different parameters that dictate how it behaves when it sees and acquires and tracks moving subjects. And these 3 parameters can actually be set and changed by you, the user. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. First, I'm going to tell you what these 3 parameters are and what they do. The first one is called tracking sensitivity, and this tells the camera how quickly it should switch to a different autofocus zone if the subject temporarily disappears from the zone that it's currently being tracked on. For example, if you're shooting a moving subject and it passes behind a tree or something moves in front of it, or if it momentarily leaves the frame. This parameter has 4 levels of adjustment, 0 to 4. When this is set to 0, the camera will immediately switch to a different AF zone in order to try to reacquire the subject as quickly as possible. Settings 1 through 4 progressively lengthen the amount of time that the camera will stay locked onto that area in hopes that the subject will return quickly. In practical use, a setting of 0 would be used when you know the subject is moving very erratically, whereas a setting of 1 through 4 would be used when you know the subject's going to come back and it's only disappeared temporarily. If it disappears behind a single tree, you might use a setting of 1. Maybe you have a small stand of trees that it's passing behind, or some cars or something, then you might use a higher setting like 3 or 4. The next parameter is called speed tracking sensitivity, and this changes the camera's tracking characteristics based on whether the subject is moving in a constant speed or if it's changing speeds. And this is an important one because when tracking subjects, the Fujifilm autofocus system relies heavily on algorithms that tell the camera where it thinks the subject's going to be at any given moment. If you're photographing subjects that are moving directly towards you or away from you at high speed, these can be really difficult situations because the distance from your camera to your subject is changing always, from 1 millisecond to the next. And so the camera's autofocus system isn't saying, it's right here now, lock it on, take the shot. There's actually a delay between when you see it's in focus and when your finger fires the shutter. With this in mind, here's what's going on. The camera knows that there's going to be a lag between when you see it in focus, when your finger actually presses the button and closes the circuit. So when the camera sees the subject here, it actually knows it's probably going to be here by the time you press the shutter. And so that's what those algorithms do. They compensate for that amount of distance where it thinks it's going to be. And so in context of this speed tracking sensitivity parameter, the camera is going to behave very differently if you tell it that the subject is moving at a consistent rate of speed versus if you tell it that it's changing speeds. Those predictive algorithms need to know how to react to the scene it's looking at. There are 3 settings in this parameter, 0, 1, and 2. 0 would be used if the subject's moving at a consistent rate of speed, like if a cyclist or a race car is moving past you really quickly. 1 might be a good choice when there's a mix of speeds, maybe you're photographing animals. Setting 2 might be a good choice when the motion is really erratic. Maybe there's lots of back and forth and changing speeds and direction, shooting a soccer game, photographing toddlers, or your golden retriever puppy. The 3rd parameter is called zone area switching, and by the name of it, this one's only available if your camera is set to zone AF. And this one controls which part of the zone should be given priority when the camera is looking for a subject to acquire. And this parameter has 3 adjustments: center, auto, and front. Center keeps the point of focus in the middle of the zone, in the middle of that box that you've selected. And remember, you can change the size of the zone AF box in your viewfinder. But either way, in center, the priority will be on the middle of that box. That's where it's going to look first when it's trying to acquire or track a moving subject. The front setting tells the camera that whenever the subject leaves the zone temporarily, it's going to look for the subject that's closest to the camera, but still inside your zone AF box when it passes through. So if you're tracking a moving subject and it leaves your focus zone briefly and then comes back, front is going to tell it to look for whatever's closest to the camera and lock on that as it moves through the frame. And auto tells the camera to just keep tracking whatever setting you initially focused on. As you probably noticed, when you're using zone AF, the little focus points can often shift around inside the box. And this is exactly what it's doing. It's looking for subjects based on how the autofocus custom settings menu is set, how these parameters are configured. You might use center if you're focusing on a subject and it temporarily passes behind another subject, behind a tree or something. You know that as you're panning and tracking that subject, it's going to stay within the same relative place in the frame once it comes out from behind that obstacle. So that center would be the best parameter for that. Front would be a good choice if your subject's moving kind of erratically and you don't know exactly where it's going to appear when it comes back into the frame. Most camera systems are calibrated to focus on the closest subject to the camera. And so, it figures that whatever you see out there, it's going to grab the closest thing. So if you're photographing a bird that's flying, it's going to grab the close bird, not the far away bird that's in the same zone. And auto is the default mode that works pretty well for a variety of motion types. Okay, now that we covered those 3 parameters, and I hope I didn't confuse the heck out of you with those, let's talk about how to use the AFC custom settings in practical use. Because whenever you're shooting, you're not going to look at a subject and go, I should probably set the tracking sensitivity to, wait, which one was that again? Should I have it at 1 or 4? Wait, was 1 where it was, oh God, wait, where'd my subject go? That's not how you want to work, right? Yeah, if you were going to try to set all those 3 parameters in real life, you would fail because there's just too much to think about in the moment, and you'd never be able to get them set quickly enough in order to capture whatever it is you're trying to photograph. So thankfully, the X-Series cameras give you 5 different presets that are already configured based on certain combinations of how these 3 parameters are set. So let's run down what these 5 presets are, because these are the ones that you're actually going to set when you're out shooting, so you want to remember what they do. For each one, I'm going to talk about how those 3 parameters are set, but you don't have to remember that. Just remember what that particular preset does, because that'll confuse you a lot less when you're out shooting. The first one is MultiPurpose. It's the default. It's designed to let you shoot and capture a wide variety of motion types and get good results. In this mode, the tracking sensitivity is set right in the middle, so it gives it a little bit of lag time and delay in case the subject moves behind another object. The speed tracking sensitivity is set to 0 for constant speed movement, and the zone area switching is set to auto. Again, this is a great mode to use when you're shooting a wide variety of subject, especially if the subject has constant speed. When I got my X-T2 back in 2016, and I first started experimenting with the AFC custom settings menu, I kept the camera on this mode, the number 1 multi-purpose mode, and I shot a wide variety of stuff, and for most things it worked really well. There were times where it didn't quite get the job done, which of course is why there are 4 more presets built into the camera. So for most things I would say just keep your AFC custom settings to the default, setting number 1. It should get you by in a lot of situations. However, if it doesn't, if you're not seeing the results that you want, if it isn't acquiring or tracking fast-moving subjects as well as you want it to, then that's when you try switching to a different preset and see if that helps. So let's look at what the other presets are. Number 2 is ignoring obstacles, and it's configured exactly how it sounds. It's designed to hold the camera's focus while you let the subject pass behind that row of trees or behind those other racers, or the bird pass behind that brief hillside. And it's going to reacquire them right when they come back into view without missing a beat. And it does this because the tracking sensitivity parameter is set a little bit higher, so that allows the camera to wait and not switch zones immediately. With the zone area switching set to center, it's going to stay locked on in the same place of the zone. It's not going to start grabbing stuff at the outlying areas of your zone AF box. For the types of action subjects that I typically shoot, this is one of the modes that works best for me. And in fact, I have 2 favorite presets in the AFC custom settings menu, and this is one of them. It actually allows you some pretty loose tolerances when you're trying to focus and frame things and follow motion that's moving behind other things. You know, one of the techniques I like to use is to capture things that are partly behind other subjects. I think that's a really neat way to draw the eye in and kind of give the sense of depth in your frame. I've been really impressed at how well it works. Like if I'm shooting a group of cyclists and they're kind of jockeying for position and moving back and forth, but I want to focus on this one person, it stays locked. It allows you some really cool creative options when you're shooting action. Maybe you're shooting your subject in a tight forest and they're pretty far back there. You don't want the camera to go grabbing all this extraneous stuff in front of them. Maybe you're photographing an animal that's moving behind all these blades of grass, kind of darting back and forth. You want to stay locked on the animal. You don't want the camera to grab these blades of grass in front of it and quickly get confused and jump back and forth. So setting number 2 is going to give you that lag time to keep your subject locked, even when it's moving around in this busy environment. Preset number 3 is called accelerating and decelerating subjects. So you can imagine how that's calibrated. With the speed tracking sensitivity set to 2, which again is calibrated for more erratic motion, and zone area switching set to auto, which gives the camera more leeway to go looking around to different parts of the zone to reacquire the subject, it'll keep the camera locked on to whatever's in the front of the zone and use predictive algorithms that are geared a little bit more towards irregular motion. This makes it an ideal preset to use when you're photographing subjects that are speeding up or slowing down on a regular basis as they move in and out of the frame. Going by the little icon on the preset, this might be a good choice for shooting motorsports. One note, Fuji specifies that this particular setting is highly effective when used with their lenses that use the linear autofocus motor. Number 4 is called suddenly appearing subjects, and this is actually my second of my 2 favorites in this menu, and I use this one a lot. As the name implies, it's designed to set the camera up so that it can instantly focus on a subject that appears in the frame. With tracking sensitivity set at the lowest level, at 0, and zone area switching to front, allows it to immediately switch to the right zone when it sees the subject. As you can imagine, this setting works exceptionally well for a wide variety of action and sports and wildlife scenes. Maybe you've got your camera framed right at this really cool jump, but you won't be able to see the subject till they're in the air right past the jump. You don't have to pre-focus, you can let the camera grab that as soon as the subject appears. And this one really opens up your creative options. Imagine all the cool shots you could come up with where you're pre-framing the camera on this exact area you want and you're just waiting for the subject to appear quickly. This is the setting to use for that. So if you're shooting action and you're having a hard time grabbing that subject quickly and it's not a matter of the subject moving behind obstacles, definitely switch to this preset number 4 and I guarantee you're going to get much better results. And of course, for best results, you want to move your little AF box to the place in the frame where you think your subject is going to enter. So that way it'll be in position and those little AF points within the zone can start working immediately when the subject enters. Preset number 5 is erratically moving subjects. The little icon on this preset is people playing tennis. So this is probably good for a variety of sports like tennis, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, again, maybe toddlers and grandchildren and golden retriever puppies. Not just stuff that moves at highly changing speeds, but very irregular and erratic motion as well. A higher setting of tracking sensitivity will keep the subject locked on. The speed tracking sensitivity set to 2 will use those predictive algorithms that are geared towards erratic motion. And the zone area switching set to auto is going to keep your subject locked on no matter where they are in the zone. Even if it's not the closest thing to the camera, and even if it leaves the subject temporarily and comes back. I can imagine this being a good setting to use on certain types of birds that fly with much more erratic and irregular motion. You know, some birds soar nicely and majestically through the sky, and some birds do this all around the frame. So any creature that has more skittish or hyperactive type movements, yeah, this would be the best setting for that. Some X series cameras have a 6th preset called Custom, and this allows you to manually adjust those 3 autofocus settings parameters and save your setup as a custom preset, number 6. And that way you can recall it quickly. In other words, you can customize the AFC custom settings to match the exact type of motion that you're photographing. Because maybe you're shooting something that's a little different from the 5 presets we just talked about. Maybe you're shooting some subjects that are constantly passing behind some long sections of obstacles, and you want the camera to hold focus for as long as possible. Well, the Ignore Obstacles preset only has a tracking sensitivity of 3. Using this option, you could go in and customize the camera so that it has a tracking sensitivity of 4, so that it'll hold that focus for as long as possible. Or maybe you're shooting some subjects and you actually want the camera to jump back and forth between subjects for whatever reason. You can decrease the tracking sensitivity. How about quickly appearing subjects that have more erratic motion than regular motion? So you could set up a custom preset that closely matches the suddenly appearing subject preset, but maybe has a higher speed tracking sensitivity parameter adjustment. Or maybe you're shooting some stuff and the camera's not holding focus as long as you want it to. It's switching zones quickly. Well, you could go into this menu and create a preset that has a zone area switching of auto. You know, using this option, you can actually play around with and manually adjust each of these 3 parameters to your liking. And like I said, experiment and see which one works the best. And then when you've got it dialed, then you just save it as that 6th preset. Either way, the AFC custom settings menu is one of the most powerful features found on the X series cameras. As I said, it's a little bit complicated at first, but hopefully I've explained this in a really easy way to help you understand it better now. It's just one more tool that allows you to manually tweak the performance settings of your X series camera to match the exact kind of photography that you like to do. And that's pretty damn cool. Bottom line, the X series autofocus system is awesome. And if you want a full tutorial on how the system works, you can watch this video here. But that being said, if you're having trouble nailing sharp focus with the subjects that you shoot, this is the best place to go first. You know, switch to a different preset. Oftentimes, that one little change is going to make all the difference and allow you to nail the subjects that you want in the way you want. I hope you found this lesson helpful. Please leave a comment and let me know what you think. Also, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. I've got a bunch of other videos and tutorials you can check out. And if you are a Fuji shooter, you'll definitely want to check out my best-selling ebook, X Series Unlimited. It's a 400-page guidebook that tells and shows you everything you need to know in order to get the best results and have the most fun with your Fuji camera. And again, if you want to throw a little bit extra support my way, you can give me a super thanks. Otherwise, you can find me on social media and Patreon at Dan Bailey Photo. You can visit my website and blog as well. So thanks very much for watching. Have fun with your Fujis out there, and I'll see you next time.